see in the current textbooks, but all of the facts that are relevant to this whole subject, and let people draw their own conclusions.
One of the questions I first came up with when I was reading the book that you did answer in the book that I'd like you to explain was that I said, well, gee, don't we have all these machines now that can look at the footprints or the bones or whatever, and that will just tell us how old it is?
Oh, this is a very common perception. We have such faith in technology and those who employ it that when we hear about things like carbon-14 testing or potassium-argon testing, we think it really is a very simple process, almost like you pop something in the microwave and boom, it comes out. It's not like that at all. These are very complicated procedures. What I found in practice is that scientists may run several tests on the same piece of bone. Some of the ages will be very great, some very small, and they will tend to pick the date to publish in their scientific literature that most fits the idea that they start out with about how old the fossil should be. Now that often happens.
What do scientists and researchers have to gain by distorting their findings? I mean, you would think that if they truly think that they found evidence of man pre-existing the dates that we take for granted right now, that they would want to be published, that they would want people to hear about this, that they would get their name up in lights, as it were, as making this remarkable discovery. Why is this so suppressed?
Well, there are tremendous pressures for conformity within the scientific community. For example, for every academic post that opens up, every professorship that opens up in an American university, there are generally hundreds of applicants. And it does not help your reputation if you go reporting things that should not be reported. It could be very bad for one's reputation. And in our book, we document several cases of that. For example, Virginia Steen McIntyre. She's a geologist who I personally know. She lives in Colorado now. She went to Mexico in the 1970s, and she was a geologist with the U.S. Geological Survey. She dated a site there where some human artifacts have been found at 300,000 years. All her test results show that that was the age of that site. But because that went against the dominant idea that human beings have only been in North America for 30,000 years, she said she was not able to get the report published. She was labeled a publicity seeker and a maverick in her community of scholars, and she said she eventually lost a professorship that she held at an American university because of this, and hasn't been able to work as a geologist since. Now, this is not the normal picture that we have of how science works, but unfortunately, these are the sorts of things that can happen, and these are the sorts of pressures that can be applied in order to keep a certain view intact.
So what do people need to do now? They apparently, we need the public to open their minds up a little bit more to alternative ideas to what we've been taught.
Well, I think one thing we need to do is develop a little bit more of a healthy skepticism towards pronouncements from spokespersons from the scientific community. Just as we've learned not to accept without question every pronouncement that may come from the press secretary of a politician or the public relations office of a corporation. We may want to dig a little further, keep an open mind, have some healthy skepticism, and I think perhaps